don't know. It doesn't say, that they went out and they returned after so many days or whatever. But we also know that in this account in chapter 6, John the Baptist had been murdered. He had lost his head by Herod. So that might have been the reason, because Jesus was close to John. It was his cousin, because they had similar ministries that they were doing. The disciples, some of them had been followers of John before they began to be followers of Jesus. That was the same with John and Andrew. They were followers of the Baptist. Whatever the case, they report to Jesus the remarkable results. And it appears that the report didn't last long because, again, the crowds. People came because ministry had taken place. They were back. And I would imagine there was excitement amongst the people, and also how needy people are looking to get helped. And so that would have been drawing more of the needy people. Verse 31 says they didn't grab a bite to eat. Boy, it was a wonderful time, a great experience, but it was also draining. VBS is a great experience. And everybody that's involved in VBS will say at the end of the week they're wore out. And we're looking at a time period during the middle of the day. We're looking at 2 hours and 4 hours on the closing day. But it wears you out because there's so many needs around you. Jesus knew that they needed time away. They needed time to rest. They needed time to regroup. And so he suggests that they take a retreat. Let's go to the other side of the lake. Let's go. Luke 9:10 says they go to Bethsaida, which is where the Jordan empties into the Sea of Galilee, and it's a desolate place, a lonely place, a solitary place. Well, I like those kind of places. When ministry has been just really heavy, boy, it's nice to get away. I used to go up to McCall and do a study leave when the Ropers had Shepherd's Rest. And it was great because, you know what, there was no people in the winter around. And I'd have to call Gloria up because, man, I haven't seen anybody. I haven't talked to anybody. All I see is the spiders I've been killing. And so I'll go to town and get something to eat to see people. We have that need for interaction, but we also have that need to regroup. And Jesus is aware. Isn't that incredible? Jesus is aware of your needs right now. He's aware of them. He was aware of their needs. He was aware that they needed a break. He's aware that maybe you need a break. And I remember somebody saying to me, just because he likes to throw it back in my face, maybe God's put you in the hospital to slow you down. And I get that put back at me several times over these 15 years that, Pastor, maybe God's allowed that in your life to slow you down a little bit. So if we are not good at retreating and regrouping, sometimes he takes care of that for us. So Jesus does. He tells them they were going to be refreshed. And can you imagine the letdown? Wow. They get in the boat and there's no crowds around them. There's no people pushing and shoving to get close. And they're looking to, it's an 8-mile trip or 4-mile trip across the water, 8 miles for if you're going by land. And so they're looking at this 4 mile as a time of break, recuperating a little bit and get to that lonely place. We'll be able to relax, and Jesus will have time for us. You ever feel that way? Just wish somebody had time for you because life has been so busy, been so hectic. Boy, and you just need a little time with them. I know I get that way sometimes, and I know I hear that from people when they call. Man, Pastor, I know you're busy, but can I have a little time? I just need to talk or just rest or something. But the people see, boy, they recognize the boats, maybe they recognize the sail, and it says that they rush around. Man, they're charging around. They have an 8-mile hike. Boy, it's kind of like a mini marathon. And so they're charging around to get around because they see where the boat's headed and they want to get there. And just as everybody, you see something exciting and they tell people along the way in the villages along the shore, and they're saying, man, Jesus is going over there. Boy, and the disciples, and they did this great ministry, and let's go see what's going to happen, and maybe he'll touch us. Maybe. You see, we don't have to say maybe today. We know he will touch us if we will go to him. Man, that's what he has shown us over and over. And so the hundreds of people, and we know that the crowd not only is hundreds, boy, thousands of people gather. It says 5,000 men were fed, and that's not including women and children. There could have been up to 10,000, maybe more, and maybe it was less. Maybe it was only 8,000. Did you ever try to feed 8,000 people? We did a barbecue at the house on Monday. And there was, I don't know how many people, 12 of us or so. Man, I was flipping burgers and flipping sausages, and, you're just kind of busy. Quincy, the other night at his house, man, we were almost all done eating, and he was still out barbecuing. And there was not 8,000 people there. Man, there was lots of people looking to have their needs met, and they're already worn out. And so we have some lessons to see as we look at this passage. Roman numeral number 1 on your outline. Jesus displays compassion and care for seekers. And that's not just, we can look at that today. It's not just for those that are outside of the body. Boy, if you're seeking the Lord, he says, a knock and you will find. The door will be open. Seek and you shall find. Ask and you shall be given. We know that that's for us as well. He has compassion when we seek him. Verse 34. And when he went ashore, he saw a great multitude, and he felt compassion for them. Instead of being angry, boy, we can be that way. Man, when life is demanding and people demand of us, and we're looking for a break, and then it's one more demand, I just want a break and I want to be away. And we, if we're honest, can be that way. Man, we can be that way towards our friends, we could be that way towards our family, our kids, we could be that way towards lots of things. But we find Jesus, instead of being angry with the people for preventing the much needed rest that the disciples needed and himself, what does he do? He feels compassion for them. That word is used in the New Testament only by and about Jesus. That word is not used about anybody else in the New Testament. Only by Jesus and about Jesus. And that's important to see because it speaks of a tender mercy. And the picture of a tender mercy to me is of a mother holding a baby. Baby's crying, and moms get the baby, and they hold that baby, and they feed the baby, and there's that tenderness for them. And that's that kind of tenderness that Jesus is displaying here. It's a sympathetic emotion that is coming out. Boy, if you look at the old language, it says out of the pit of his stomach. Boy, just the whole body is involved in this expression of compassion. It suggests something more than pity. It suggests actual help. Not just looking on and say, oh man, them poor people. But Jesus wants to do something for them, and indeed we see that here. The compassion is not just for the physical need, but for lostness. He saw the thousands as sheep, it says, without a shepherd. Defenseless. They were lost. They were unable to feed themselves. And that's a picture of Old Testament Israel. Boy, they were people without a shepherd. And boy, in Ezekiel, Lord comes down on the priest and that. Well, you're not shepherding my people. You're not taking care of their needs. There's sheep that are out there lost. There's a lot of lost sheep today. And you know what? He wants us to be his hands and his feet. He wants us to touch them. And some of the ways you wind up having to touch, and we find that with the benevolence all the time, is through meeting a physical need, a financial need, a medical need, helping people out. This week, again, we had the opportunity to help, this time a missionary couple that needed a couple of tires. They had some money, didn't have enough to buy the tires, and we were able to help do that. Because as a body, man, we might be down in our general giving, but our benevolence continues. Peg and I used to be just amazed. We'd give out benevolence, and I'd say, Peg, how much? Well, Pastor, the weird thing is, everything we gave out just came back in. I can't figure that out. It's God. He has compassion, tender mercies. He is seeking to help, and we are his hands and feet, and you know what? We're also his bank account to help meet the needs of the people around us. And that we see here once again. Here we see the first thing about how the second Moses meets the needs of those who come to him. He meets it with compassion. He meets it with compassion for their spiritual needs, because we see, he didn't feed them first. You see, that was a secondary need. I'm sure they thought it was a major need. I'm sure the disciples did. But Jesus, it says, taught them. That's the very first thing that he does. But he meets them. He says in verse 34, the second part, so he began to teach them many things. More exactly, he taught them at great length. There's a great illustration on the compassion about Abraham Lincoln in William Elroy Curtis's book on Lincoln's life. He says there was an old man whose son had been convicted of gross crimes in the Army and sentenced to be shot. There was a number of incidences where Lincoln dealt with situations like this. There was a mother who went because her son was going to be shot, and here's another incident. As the boy was the only son, the case appealed to Lincoln, but he had just received a telegram from General Butler, and it read, "Mr. President, I beg you not to interfere in the court-martial of this army. You will destroy all discipline in the army." Lincoln handed the telegram to the father, and he watched the shadow of disappointment go over that man's face as he realized, boy, his son probably doesn't stand a chance. And suddenly Lincoln grabs his arm and he exclaims, if you've read anything about Lincoln's life, by jingo is just a phrase that he used frequently. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me, but boy, Lincoln liked it. He says, by jingo, Butler or no Butler, here it goes. And he wrote out an order and handed it to the father. And the man read the order, which was as follows: Job Smith is not to be shot until further orders from me, Abraham Lincoln. And he gave that to the father, and the father said, "Why? I thought you were going to pardon him, but you may order him to be shot next week." And here, listen to this. "My old friend," said Lincoln, "evidently you do not understand my character." Boy, you see the parallel with God? We need to understand his character. The very character of God is a character of compassion. "If your son is never shot until the order comes from me, he may live to be as old as Methuselah." Lincoln had no intentions on sending a second order, but he didn't want to disregard his general. He didn't want to put the army into disorder, so he gives an order that don't do anything until the next order comes. Incredible man, Lincoln, kind of like a Solomon in our times. And the point, regardless of whether you're a believer or not, if you cannot imagine Jesus as having tender mercy and compassion for you, you simply don't know what he's like. You don't know his character. You see why we need to read the Gospels? We need to read the Word of God so that we see the heart of God, because we know Jesus is the exact image of the Father. And we know that Jesus did nothing on his own, John 5:19, but only what the Father was doing. And so what's the Father doing here? He's showing compassion. And Jesus is showing the compassion of God. That God cares about our needs. He cares where we're at. Hebrews 4:15. I think it's up on the wall. I think I put it there. He gives an accurate picture of Jesus' caring. It says, "We do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weakness, but one who has been tempted in all things as we are, yet without sin." Man, Jesus knows our needs. And he cares about those needs. And he seeks to meet them. He felt it then. But don't miss it, he feels it now too. Man, he knows what your struggles are. He knows where you're at. He knows your ups and downs. And he seeks to meet them. How he does that is always amazing. You know, I got a call the other day, like I said, on July 4th from a friend who was distraught, an older fella, and he was in tears. Man, I mean, he was just weeping as he was talking to me. And struggling with life. And God used me as a person to be there for him. At that moment, I began to be the hands and feet and mouth of God. And you see, that's what God wants you to be. His hands, his feet, his eyes, his mouth, to touch the lives of people around, to display this tender mercy and this compassion. Boy, not to ignore the needs of those around us, but to seek how we can do something. 9 times in the New Testament we read that Jesus had a deep compassion. man, over and over he had a deep compassion. And if you read John and you read the end of Revelation, man, if everything was written about Jesus